Welcome to the NCDWI Guy podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI Guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 71 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, we are talking about scaling up with one of the masters of scaling your practice. Brian King is joining us on today's episode. Brian is the managing partner of King Law. His office has locations in North and South Carolina, about 15 locations. He manages a practice of about 50 attorneys and staff, more than 25 attorneys between all of the offices, all kinds of different practice areas: estate planning, personal injury, family law, criminal law. So a wide range of different practice areas, all working for the little guy. And so, Brian, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on. We're all kind of in this little guy representation mindset, but you've kind of taken it to the next level. So we're very excited to have you on today's program.
Jake, thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. I am so impressed with what you put together here. I've been a big fan. We've been listening in our cars across as you've built this up during our COVID times. And now as we're really getting back into court, it's really exciting to be able to use a lot of the things that you say. I love the fact that you have blended your practice with the business area, and at the same time showing how that's all client coordinated. And I'm really excited to be here. Hopefully we can share some information that will help everybody and all your listeners.
I appreciate that very much, Brian. I think, kind of having some of these episodes focus on practice area specific issues, but then also realizing that if you can't get clients to come in the door, you're not going to be helping anybody. You can know everything you want to know about the law, but if you can't get people to call you on the phone and then help them from both the courtroom side of things, but also from just a life side of things, that's not going to do any good. So excited to talk about the way that you have grown your firm. And so I guess maybe just take us back, kind of coming out of Campbell Law School and kind of what it looked like in the first few years of practice before starting your own office, and how that kind of then grew from yourself to what you are now.
Jake, thank you. Yes, I graduated from Campbell Law in 1998, and I'm from a little town, Forest City. A lot of your North Carolina listeners will know tiny little sleepy town in the foothills. When I went off to law school, I went to Charlotte undergrad, and I was ready for the big city, and that's where I was going to be. I was going to go into public relations, maybe politics, enjoy my time there. And as I went to law school, I realized more and more that I loved the small town, and I loved being able to be in there and to know the attorneys, and they all went to lunch together with the judges. And there was just some camaraderie there that I really loved. So in 2002, I made the plunge, started in a one-room above legal grounds, a bar in Rutherfordton, and started with one room. And I remember Kim came walking in. She was like 17, 18 years old. It's like, I'd like to work in a law firm. And I'm like, I can't pay you, but come on in. And we started working from that time. 2002 also turned out to be the same year the last textile mill closed in Rutherford County. And what the rest of the world got to see in 2008, we were seeing in 2002. And I realized right then that I had a chance to either grow or I was going to die. And a lot of the big firms, and I say big firms in a small town, we're talking 3-4 people, attorneys working together, they all ended. And suddenly there was a free-for-all. And I remember thinking, I can do this by making growth happen. And so scaling wasn't necessarily a dream of mine as much as it was a necessity. And then when you realize that I can do this over 2 offices, it's a lot easier to add that 3rd office. It's a lot easier to add that 4th. And pretty soon you've got, covering 2 states, and our growth plan, our strategic plan that you were talking about last week, is impressive in terms of what we're wanting to accomplish. I still think about those days that I was the person answering the phone. And I know a lot of your listeners are this way. I mean, the phone would ring, I had to pick it up. The trash needed to be taken out, I took out the trash. And from that standpoint, I never let that change, no matter how big we get. Last night I was rolling the trash cans out. I mean, it still is part of what you do, but it's that excitement of what you have. And of course, putting together a good plan, because when growth happens, you have to be ready for it. And you have to be ready for it before it happens. And it will happen if your listeners are following the advice that you give, that your great guests give every week. You're going to grow. And how you deal with that growth is what scaling up is all about.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's probably some people that have walked down this road that have gone about it from the angle that you have, which is, I want to grow out of necessity. I think there's other people that are walking down this road kind of thinking, there's just some sort of push in that direction of growth, but growing out of necessity is kind of an interesting kind of thought work for that particular reason of scaling up. What was it about kind of growing that you thought, this is what is going to allow me to survive? Because most people, when there is a kind of shutdown of, local economy, basically say, who can I get rid of? What can I kind of cut from my costs? How can I move and work out of my home office? Generally, the mindset isn't, I'm going to go out and kind of build myself into something bigger. I'm going to hire people. So what was it that you saw as this kind of necessity for, growing to allow your practice to thrive?
Yeah, I would say that our biggest growth times have been in economic stress times, and that's strategic. You have to think that way, because what I look at is, growth is a concept. It doesn't necessarily mean a number, and I'm all about the numbers. And the important part of growth is market share. Let's be specific for a moment to DWI. Let's say that you're a practicing attorney in a large town or a small town, wherever that may be, across North Carolina or any of the other places that you practice. There's going to be a couple of key moments that are going to happen in terms of scaling, and the first one is going to be getting that first client. And we know how exciting that can be. And you talk a lot about that. And I love that you have to be able to sell yourself. That's so important to be able to do that. So that's your first moment. And when you realize that you're good at it and you realize that you have that, the next most important one is when you get that first client that's one too many. Okay. And I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know what that number is going to be for you. But let's say that if you're doing a DWI, that you feel comfortable if you can handle 50 DWIs at one time in their various stages, whatever that stage is. When you get 51, you have to make a decision. And at 51, you have to decide, am I going to grow to be able to handle this? Or am I going to be very happy where I am? And let me make it very clear, because when I talk about scaling up, it's easy for me to say, well, this is what you have to do. That is not what you have to do. I love a lot of very successful attorneys that never change from that initial idea, saying like, I like my hands on every one of my cases, on every one of my clients. But that case number 51 becomes so important, because when you realize, hey, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring somebody else in, or I'm going to scale that up. And then after 51, then the number starts becoming 200, 300. And you start realizing, okay, I can't just keep hiring an attorney. That doesn't make any difference. Attorneys, for better, lack of a better term, they're going to come and they're going to go. Attorneys are free agents. They're great. It's, we're in incredible practice. Economically, everything tilts to our favor. We're in a monopoly. The only way you can compete against us is to go through the bar exam. But there's so many things that we can do. It's going to be, you're going to have associates. You're going to have associates that are going to be able to come in. You're going to sometimes have associates that are going to leave. The question is none of those things. It's where are you going to be in that number? And then my feeling is it's not just about that raw number. It's about getting that market share. Because when you start getting into it, what's more important is, because in lean times, everybody's going to have lean times. Right now, as we're doing this talk in August of 2021, we're in booming times. Okay. It's pretty crazy to say that. 1 year ago,
Yep.
We were in super lean times. So right now, we're in boom times. But the work you did last year during COVID is increasing your market share. And if you can change your market share from 10% of the DWIs in the counties that you practice to 12%, that doesn't sound like much. But what you've done is you've increased your business by 20%. And most law firms are going to be operating under a 20% profit margin. Talk about after you've paid yourself off of those things. You've changed your dynamic just in that percentage. So what I would say is in lean times, that's the time to attack. That's the time to increase that market share. Because what it will do is, 10 to 12% is going to possibly look like, let's say, 20 cases for you in terms of that in lean times. But in boom times, that same percent growth might be 100 new cases. And that truly is the kind of difference we're having right now in 2021 than where we were in 2020. So I would say that you want to be thinking in terms of market share. You want to be thinking in terms of that growth, but you also want to be thinking about what your infrastructure is going to look like. And that's the way you scale because let me tell you, I run, I think we were up to 16 different locations. Right now with our summer interns, I think we're really over 70 people on payroll right now. But my problems are exactly the same problems as your listener who has one office who's answering their own phone. Right. We all have to get new clients. We all have to service those clients. We have to bill those clients, and we have to do collections of those clients. We got to turn those clients into referral sources for more clients for us. Nothing changes. The question is, how many hats are you wearing? And how stressed out are you in doing all those things? So I feel like that's where the heart of this part of the growth process comes.
Yeah, and I love the idea of kind of these two moments of getting your first client in the door, and then kind of that client that calls that is the one too many client. And there's a number of different ways you can respond to that one too many client. You can basically say, well, I'm going to just turn this down. I'm happy where life is. I like the amount of hours that I'm working. That is the unique breed of attorney, I think, that takes that. And I would applaud the people that kind of make that decision and follow that. I think the vast majority of us are in this mindset of, well, we could probably do case number 51 on our own. Like we'll just figure out a way to get more time. And slowly you kind of, are spending less and less time with your family. You're getting stressed out. You're dropping the balls in the courtroom. So I think that the reason, even though we recognize we've got too much on our load, there's almost this hesitation of, if I bring somebody else aboard, I'm going to have to train them, teach them things. I don't have the time to actually do that. I don't have the ability to communicate the things that I'm doing in the courtroom to this new person. They won't be able to do it as well as me. I won't be able to, afford somebody else to come in. So there's kind of all these doubts that come into that place. And I think one thing that, would be a way to address some of that is to really start strategically planning at case number 25 and basically say, I can see that the end is coming in terms of me being able to handle all of these cases down the road. What is going to happen when I hit case number 50? I always tell new associates at the office here, enjoy the free time while you have it as you're starting out, because in another 6 months and another year, it is going to be gangbusters and you're not going to get this time back. So if you're not using the free time now to, be researching things, reading, documents on DWI, reading handbooks on DWI, attending court and watching what's going on in the courtroom, and just kind of using that time for education, making sure that you are handling your caseload now in the courtroom as though you have 80 DWIs pending or 50 DWIs pending. Don't wait until you actually have 80 DWIs pending to start arranging your schedule like that. Do it now. If you can kind of get multiple cases set on the same day, try to do that now and get in the habit and practice of doing that, because you're not going to have that, kind of in your framework if you're not doing it now. So I think one thing that is key is recognizing before you get to case number 51, what's going to happen when I get to that point. And if you can just tell yourself, I'm going to just quit at case 50, that's good. You kind of made that decision much easier when case number 51 comes down the road. But if you decided to take case 51, now you at least have some sort of a kind of game plan of how you're going to go about hiring somebody, whether that's an assistant or an associate, whatever it might look like. What is that going to, what is my training time? How far out should I start kind of advertising for, a new person to come aboard? And so as you've kind of grown through each stage of bringing new people on board, whether that is attorneys or staff, kind of what is improved over time in terms of recognizing where there is going to be kind of a need in the near future to fill? What is the, some of the things that you guys do in terms of the onboarding process? Because that, I think, is for me, was definitely like trial by fire. There was, I feel so bad for the first like few employees that I've had, and some of them are still here and they remember those Wild West days of like, yeah, Jake basically just told me to go to court and figure it out. Like there was no kind of like plan in place at that point. And now it's a much better looking onboarding process. But what does that kind of look like over the years?
Yeah, Jake, there was so much packed into that. And it's so good that you're thinking in terms of that. Yes. I would say that anytime you are a practicing attorney, especially in an area that might be new for your firm, or maybe you're a solo practitioner, you need to immediately, you don't need to wait till 25. From case one, if you're a new practitioner, you're starting a new firm, or you're leaving a firm to go opening up your own, you need to think, right now, I have two jobs. You have to do that this way. In fact, when we opened up the personal injury practice, which was a new practice for our area, I did the same thing. Came talk to a new associate and told her, I said, look, I don't have anybody else doing this. And this is the same thing I would say to that new attorney. I would say, you're wearing two hats right now. From day one, you're wearing the hat of the practitioner. You're the technician, using some of the language that I know we use on this podcast, that you're the technician. You are the one going to court. You're doing it. But you are also the supervisor. That second hat of that, you are the lead of that. So I want everything that you do to be documented in such a way that even though you're the only person doing it right now, you are creating a teacher manual for what's going on. I mean, I'm walking around right now. I've got my book. This is the whole King Law book. I've modified it many times. I think 28 different chapters, just handwritten. This is what I do, because now I do the same thing because someday somebody else is going to be sitting in that CEO type chair, and they're going to be making these decisions. And it's unfortunately, my decisions are now $1 million decisions instead of my mistakes are a lot more expensive. But that's what you've got to have, that mindset. You need to say, like, every time I go to court on case number one, yes, I'm going to learn for myself. I'm going to learn more about that judge. I'm going to learn a little bit more about that officer. I'm going to learn more about what the law is and those things. But it doesn't mean anything if you're not thinking about that second hat, which is, I'm doing an autopsy on that case. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What procedures do I want to have in? And you're constantly locking that procedure down. And even if you're the fifth attorney at your law firm, that is the DWI team that you have, you still want to be thinking of yourself as being the supervisor of the next person coming in. Because let me tell you, you want to know when you do it, the answer is you always want to do it one step too early, and you always end up doing it one step too late. Okay. So at our law firm, we talk about always having a bench. I mean, basically, if you're a good practitioner in the areas where King Law is, we look at you. We're making an evaluation. We don't care if there's no chance that we can afford you. We're thinking in terms of, if that person became available right now, how much would we pay them? What could we do to turn them into something that would be beneficial for them and beneficial for us. And you want to be a step ahead. So you definitely don't want to wait till, that number 51 comes in. It's too late. You can't bring in somebody. That's why at King Law, our process is long. As soon as I find out who is coming into the law schools, the 5 law schools that we recruit from, I'm sending them LinkedIn requests. I hope that doesn't seem too creepy to them, but if you're at Campbell, if you're at Wake Forest, if you're at Liberty, if you're at USC, if you're at Chapel Hill, I want to know who you are, because if you have a connection to my area, you're a good fit for us.
Right.
You may not know it yet, but we want to start planting seeds. I want them to know who King Law is at that early stage. And, we recruit at least 10 interns every year. And we make sure that they have as robust of a summer as possible, enjoy as much as we can. This week, we took all of our interns to Top Golf and just took a day off and just hit some golf balls and talked planning.
That's awesome.
You can't wait till number 51. There's a lot of firms out there like King Law that are hitting these guys up and doing everything we can to bring them in. So we want to make sure that they feel comfortable. And more importantly, we want to say, like, look, when you walk in, you're going to jump into our onboard planning. And I'm not talking to you about this as I'm hiring you. I'm talking about this, if possible, while you're a 1L. And that you're going to be assigned a mentor attorney, that you're going to feel like that you've got these things. And yes, you're still going to feel like that first day, it's still going to be the Wild West. You're still going to be in front of a judge that's going to tell you something you don't know, and it's going to be something a little bit crazy or whatever that situation is. But all you have to do is envision what your firm is going to look like in 10 years. And I would say at that point, start acting like it. I'd love, this is what if you're saying, look, I know how to do DWIs and I'm going to be good at it. Well, guess what? You're going to get more clients than you can handle. It's just going to happen. I don't care if you are Joe down the street or you're F. Lee Bailey or whatever that's going to look like, you're going to be able to bring in more clients than what you're going to be able to handle. So from day one, start working on that procedure. Like, this is not just how me as Brian King does a DWI. This is how King Law does a DWI. And even when it was just me, I had a full operating agreement. I knew exactly the kind of growth I wanted to have and what it would look like. And I had a lot of procedures about what associates were going to do and how there's things before I hired my first associate. But as you work on it, you're constantly going back. You're constantly working back on that. And yes, now we have a pretty lengthy onboarding that we do. But I'm also trying to be very open and say, look, at King Law, we're not asking you to stay here for the rest of your life. We want you to be, but maybe you want to do something else. How can we help you springboard into that? And let people feel comfortable in saying, like, hey, they're not here to hold me back. They're here to push me forward.
Right.
And I do think that sometimes if you think, hey, I need to get this workload off of me, I need to go find an associate, you're not going to have the mind frame that an associate's going to run and jump and say, like, hey, that's where I want to practice. You got to think, how can I solve clients' problems in a way that these associates that are going to be very different, they're going to be generationally different than you. They may be politically different than you. They may have a lot of different views. But if they have that heart, those values that you have, they're a freedom fighter, they're wanting to do those things, then you can just say, like, look, I'll bring you the clients and I will unleash you on that. And you're not thinking about what gets it off my back. You're thinking about, like, man, I'm providing this opportunity to be able to link that up in a procedure that I know and I feel comfortable with. And it's a lot of check-ins. It's a lot of discussions. Yes, it is going to be a lot more work than doing it alone. But let me tell you, you guys know the difference. When you see me walking into district court, and some of your listeners will see me walk in district court, I'm probably going to now be wearing just a button shirt and going to talk to the judge to see how the associates are doing. And having a good time in that, because I enjoy what I do. I love what I do. If you're that attorney that took on case number 75, you're overworked, you're stressed, and you want out of the practice of law. So my feeling is, you make that decision early on, and I think that's where that is. But make sure you remember, you're not just taking work off of yourself. so you can get some kind of benefit later on. You're helping a young attorney who's probably going to change the world. And if it's anything like the people we hire, they're going to be a lot smarter than you anyway.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. I think that I think that's part of the learning process in terms of hiring. I think that for us, when I first started out and kind of embarrassingly up until about 2 years ago, through basically the first, 7-8 years of having the firm, there was not a good kind of hiring process in terms of how are we going to kind of publicize this new opportunity? How are we going to go about kind of trying to recruit people to kind of come in and fill this opportunity? What does our onboarding system look like? What does our application process look like? Our interview process? What information are we looking to get back? There wasn't really any of that. Again, it was kind of Wild West, and that went on for a long time. And I think part of that was almost always hiring out of necessity as opposed to hiring with like a strategic plan in place. And when you have that strategic plan in place, when you've got that hiring process in place early on, and you can say, we're going to have this role that's going to be open, what would be the ideal candidate to fill this role? Who would that, what would that look like? What would their kind of personality look like? What would the kind of value system that we have as an office look like in terms of this individual? You're going to find much better fits when you're kind of actively thinking about going out and recruiting. And I think at this point, we've kind of shifted to almost a entirely recruiting driven process, basically in terms of bringing on new hires, because there's just so many great people that are out there kind of looking for a good fit. And so if you kind of have the kind of framework of what that looks like, and you've got something good to offer in terms of a opportunity, you're going to get a good candidate. You just have to be proactive about that. But I think that is a huge mistake that I made, was just not being proactive enough on that front. It was always hiring out of need. Like I'm overwhelmed. It's time to get somebody else to come in and help. And so you put like a job posting out there, all right, we've got 5 candidates. We better pick one of them, because I mean, we gotta get somebody, sitting in the desk here, the next couple of weeks, instead of just being like, we got to wait for the right person. And now, having done that over the last, kind of 5 years, 3 years, very proactively, the team that we have now is it's the dream team. You're coming into work, it's being around these people that is so incredible. The work environment that's created from having the right people on board. And I think that's one of the frustrations. I'll end with this. I think it's one of the frustrations of new attorneys. It certainly was on my end. I got lucky on the first couple of hires, just being A players, and they're both still here at the office. But in terms of some people that we've had at the office, it's just kind of like, hiring out of necessity. And then you grow frustrated. You have to kind of, deal with continuous drama for a long period of time, and ultimately go through like a really difficult kind of firing process. And so, I think knowing that that's a potential, or if you have like a bad fit as a first employee, it's like, it'd just be easier if I did this on my own, right? Like that just wasn't worth it. I'm just going to kind of make this work. So again, I feel like you have definitely got that onboarding process, and obviously with the kind of intern program that you have, it seems like you guys have become very, very proactive about that.
Yeah, you have to be people first. I remember, because to me, if you get the right people, they'll take. I love what you said about having like this group of A players around me, and I know the kind of growth that you guys have done. It's just incredible. If I see an A player, I will make an offer to them wherever they are. One of my best A players that I had was my coffee barista. Went a couple of times, and I was like, I can just tell she's running this place. She's probably at the lowest level pecking order. I later found out, I don't even think she was 21 when I remember saying like, I love where you are, and I really want somebody that's good at where I get my coffee in Forest City. But where I really need you is a job at the office. And she was fantastic for me. It turns out she had a vision to be a photographer. And we were saying, okay, what do you need to be able to get that? And now she's a fantastic photographer, still comes back and does pictures for us for our website.
That's
and things
awesome.
like that. And I think that's what I would say to your team. It's like, look, don't worry so much about the what, because your A players, I mean, if you said that they've been there from the beginning, what they're doing now is probably very different than what they did back then.
Yes.
But you found out what their talents are. You find out what their interests are. If they have that vision, if they have that excitement and that gets you there, then they will take you to that next step. And you need to be on the lookout of that. If you're working with DWIs, if that is your focus, guess what? Legal technicality and things like that. Listen to this podcast. You will get what you need on that end. What you're going to need is people who can handle a very difficult, maybe an embarrassing situation for the public or for that client, and be able to take them from where they are to where they're going to be. And when you do that, I don't care. Don't look at your bottom line. Don't be concerned about saying, can I afford this person? The question you should be asking is, can I afford not to have an office full of A players?
Right.
And if I can find an A player, I will put them there, and I assure you they will make your money. As long as you tell them what they have to do. I think that the problem is almost always falls back on me. Did I give them clear
I can totally relate to that. Sorry to interrupt, Brad, but I totally relate.
That's, it's like, okay, now I got an A player. Now I need to tell that A player what I need from them. And we are very specific on that. If you're a new attorney at our office, because I did spend 2 years as an associate before, and I love the people I work with, and this is nothing negative about that, but I had no idea how much money I was making for the firm.
Right.
They never told me.
Yeah.
I didn't know how much I was worth. I thought I wanted a raise. And I remember going in thinking I was going to get a raise because I was going, I had my information about it. And it's laughable thinking back on it because nothing was business oriented.
Right.
So now you come into King Law, it's going to be transparent. I will tell you exactly how much that you're making. We'll talk about exactly when we're talking about in terms of what that bonus is going to look like, what exact dollar figure you have. I drill it down to the day. This is how much you need to bill during the day to be successful. And it's only like 2.5 to 3 hours. It's not onerous. I'm not talking about like lording over somebody. In fact, I don't really care about whether or not they're there. I just want to see the arrow up. I want them to care about where they are. And we do that all the way through. Every person, from our financial director, our intake, our controller, everybody has a number, just one number that they can just say at the end of the week, did I get it or not? And if you have good people, you have that, don't worry about how much they're going to cost you. They're going to make you multiple times what you're going to spend. Trust it. I mean, the practice of law is not going away. It's going to be a lot different in the future. That's great. We're ready for it. We'll make changes as it happens. But in the moment, you do it. I will tell you, it's never had bad times, but I've often thought if things got bad, I would have to do what I had to do to reduce my force. Last year during COVID, we increased, I think, 23% in terms of our employment in 2020.
That's wild.
Instead of decreasing, we saw it because suddenly we had people who we didn't think we could get before that suddenly we could actually reach out and find them. But I always know at the end of the day, if things were to go bad, a lot of my people could find jobs anywhere. I mean, they could work for anybody. And in a way, let that, kind of keep you lifted up and say, like, look, if it doesn't work, we'll make sure we get them to a place where it works for them, because we can find that if we were ever to come to that point. Fortunately, we never have had to. And I would just say, like, don't be concerned about that. Don't let your budget be your guide on that. Let the A players, let the people be your guide. And then we'll figure out how to get to the money. Be frank with them and say, hey, I was with my group. I said last year in March, I said, I don't know. Maybe we're going to be at 25% revenue. I keep a pretty healthy cash balance and we're debt free. So I don't have to owe any money to anybody to make this happen. But if things go bad, we're going to work with you, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure we didn't. And we didn't. And everybody tightened up a little bit. And now we're paying I think, like I said, we're in boom times. I want to say the same thing. We're going to continue to grow, not being worried that, hey, boom times will end. Yes, boom times will end. Inflation is coming. All of these things are going to happen. That doesn't change my mentality of saying, like, we're trying to collect as many good people as we can. And, and I think that's what you have to be thinking in terms of, but you do have to give them very specific instructions, because just making the right hire is not enough. You have to be able to tell them, because A players want to be A players.
Right.
So you have to give them a measuring stick.
Yeah. The measuring stick is so important. I think that in terms of just that whole mindset, what is the measuring stick? What does it look like to be successful in this role? That is really something that I think a lot of people fail on in their first hire and their first couple of hires. Again, going back to personal experience, I know I didn't really set the expectations right for those first few hires. And part of the reason was I didn't know what the expectations were. So it wasn't like I just didn't communicate it to them. It was just, I didn't have that figured out at that point. So, I think that one of the things that all firms that scale up well do is get very analytical, look at the data. They get very good about tracking numbers and setting specific measurements for success, key performance indicators, whatever you want to call them. So in terms of what that looks like at King Law, what would be some of those, some examples of the KPIs that you all use to kind of measure success?
Jake, this now you're talking my language. I mean, this is what I love to talk about. Every week I have a meeting with the team, and this is not my partnership team. It is made up of, I believe, 5 of attorneys, various ones from partners all the way down to a new associate. But it also includes our general manager, Kimberly Mullinax, financial director, our intake lead, our controller. We've got a team, I think, of 12 people that meets every week. So it's a little bit of everybody's represented. One of my case managers or paralegals, like what most firms would call them. Why? Because I want every person represented around that table. And every week we look at 8 numbers. And if I have these 8 numbers, I literally have been on a beach in Mexico or been in Europe. And as long as I know what these numbers are, I know if we made it or not. And let me tell you how specific they are. For instance, my weekly revenue, and this is probably a little bit older one that I pulled back, was $134,615. That's how specific it is. My payroll is now over $350,000 a month, right? Just to kind of get an idea of what that looks like to your listeners in terms of those numbers. I have it broken down to that level. I need to know, are we going to make it or we're not? The amount of leads that we have, I want to have 193 leads. I want to have 115 appointments set. I want 103 of them to show. I mean, these are very specific kind of numbers. Now, those are going to be very different for each firm. I think those ones I would say would be maybe not universal, like personal injury and things like that may be a little bit different if you're in contingency based or you're doing a slightly different kind of one. But to me, it doesn't matter where you are. You're going to want to know what your weekly revenue is. You're going to want to know what your leads are. You're going to want to know what how many appointments you're set, how many of them showed. Then you want to know how many of them you converted into clients. I like to know how much we billed during the month, during that week, because I love you guys that tell me that you get 100% of your billing in. We'll see. Okay. I would just say you might not be doing accounting right. If you are. I like to know how much we're collecting through collections, and that's our 90-day past receivables. Are we doing our work to get that old money back? That money's already been earned. I remember Rick Rogers, professor at Campbell, taught me so much in law office management. But one of the phrases that still remind me is there's nothing less valuable than attorney services already provided. You can't repossess them. They're all gone and they have no value at all to people. So you've got to be pretty active if you're going to collect that money afterward. I want to know how much money I have in trust, because that's a big important part. We do a lot of hourly billing. So I want to know how much our clients have paid us that's out there, that we've already collected the money. All we need to do is get the work done. And then I'm huge on number of reviews that we get. And we survey our clients multiple times during the time. And I want all that to be broken down. Every one of those numbers I just said, I've got those are given to me every week. And because I'm super lazy, they're either in green, that means we made it. They're in yellow, that means we're right at the zone of it, or they're in red, which means we didn't make it. So I can just instantly look. I can literally flip up my phone and I can look down. If I see all green, enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Yeah, that's awesome.
If it's all red, I'm like, okay, what COVID hit again? Or whatever it might be. But
and I think what's
so
so important on that front in terms of just the specificity, and I love you sharing some of those specific measuring sticks. But I think what is so difficult is for newer attorneys, especially, but even attorneys that are within the first few years of practice, is trying to figure out what measuring sticks are important. And so I think you can start any number of different places, but I think the key is start measuring. What gets measured gets improved. I mean, that's just literally the end solution. If you find something not improving as you're measuring it, it's probably not very important. So, measure as much as you can. And then where you're seeing improvement, those are the things to then focus in on. So, how many times you go to court on a specific type of case, right? Can I take a case going to court from 5 times down to 3? Can I take a case resolution from 6 months down to 2 without, kind of any negative implications in terms of the client? But, in all honesty, most clients, as long as they've got the monies ready to go, would prefer their case get handled in 2 months as opposed to 6. So kind of how are you measuring all of these various numbers? I love all of the measurements about how many calls are coming in, how many of those clients are becoming active clients, potential clients are actually signing up. All of those numbers are so critical. And I think one of the things, again, that just sounds scary to a younger attorney or somebody that's kind of not been thinking in this mentality is, I don't know how to do a spreadsheet with graphs that are all different colors. It's all, be simple with it. Figure out, you can do this in an Excel sheet from 1 week to the next, or one month to the next. There's all kind of great software out there that exists for this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's really just what is measured gets improved. So the sooner that
Jake, like I said, we're aiming for a $7 million year this year at our firm. And at the same time, one of the biggest numbers that we've got, because one of the things I wanted to do was to increase the amount of the initial retain. I felt some of the attorneys just weren't evaluating the case enough to realize that, hey, that's not enough. You got to really think through this. So that's a tough thing. You've dealt with associates. It's a hard thing to, they're used to dealing with hypotheticals in law school. They didn't know about money.
Yeah.
So what we did was, I've got all the spreadsheets. I got all those things, but the most effective thing we got is a poster board from Staples and stickers, gold stickers.
There you go.
And we just put a gold sticker by the attorney as it happened. And we just took a picture of it, sent it firm wide. Why? Because that kind of low tech, sometimes you can flip through spreadsheets, and one of my worst is Google Analytics. You can go down pages and pages of data and get excited about it and realize at the end, this really didn't help me. Did this get me another client? It does help. There's a place for it. But if I was starting a new firm, that's what I would do. I just go right now to your break room. I'd get a poster and I'd say, what do you want? What is it that you want? Do you want more clients? Do you want more revenue? Do you want to close more cases? Whatever it is, make it something simple. and just say, for the month of September, we're going to put a sticker up here for everyone. And I know that sounds foolish and it sounds childish, but it makes a big difference, because like you said, if you start making that something that people measure, that they can see, that they, when they go and get a Coke from the refrigerator, that they're looking at it and say like, man, I can't believe that Joe has closed 5 DWI cases.
Yeah.
I've only got 3 stars up there. And it's
I
subtle, but it motivates.
I think the scoreboard has been very, very powerful, or it is very powerful. And I love that visual that's accessible to everyone. When we kind of started first sharing our numbers with the entire team, attorneys and staff, and what each attorney is bringing in, I was kind of nervous about sharing all of that financial information with the rest of the team. And instead, what it kind of produced was this kind of like healthy camaraderie and competition, to kind of visualize what is possible out there. And even because, I've kind of been still engaging in practicing, was like, man, I got to step it up. I haven't hit my numbers yet, and I'm not really competing with anybody, but it was that kind of visual reminder. I think for so long, out of law school and starting my own practice, if you come up to me and ask me in the courtroom, how are things going in terms of your firm? I might say, well, it seems like it's been a gangbusters month, or it's been slow. Like that, has it been slow for you? How are things going? Does it seem like things are kind of trending in the wrong direction? But it was all feeling based, right? Like there was nothing that was really kind of there to measure. And so over time, now being able to kind of look back and say, well, I know how this June compares to last June and 2 years ago at the same time. I know how many leads that we had during those months, what the monthly revenue numbers were for the firm, what they were for each attorney. Being able to see that, it's just a total different visualization. So again, I think one thing that's important for the person listening that only has one person that's working with them, or is solo, is that start the numbers now, because the more data that you have to collect and track on that front, not only will it help improve those numbers, but you'll have something to compare future numbers to as you're moving forward. And that scoreboard idea I love, because I just think as an office, it really kind of creates a sense of where is everybody else at. I think a lot of drama is created at an office because not everybody knows what everybody else is doing and how hard they're working and different things. And the scoreboard just kind of creates a kind of, standardization of what's happening within the office in terms of numbers specifically.
I love that. We do the same thing. I know you guys, I can't imagine when you've got 8 hours plus drive time between your offices like you do. We're not quite as spread out as that at this point, but you have to have a way to kind of level that playing field around. And everybody is exactly what you said. At first you get concerned. You're like, oh, I don't know. What about this share? I don't want to discourage people or somebody to feel like they're at the bottom of the totem pole. And you instantly realize, hey, that's not what it is. And you start saying like, look, okay, amongst the first year associates, this is where you are. That makes a lot of sense on that. And some of our people are, for instance, in a pioneer office. We have a small office in Spruce Pine. I don't expect somebody in Spruce Pine to make as much money as somebody in our Charlotte office, or in our Asheville office, or in our Greer office. They know what their numbers are, and everybody kind of gets that. And what you realize is everybody kind of helps out and be like, oh, well, Joe, he's looking a little bit slow this month. I'm killing it right now, and I'm kind of tired. Let me reach out and let you get Joe involved with what's going on here. And that's how, we have these weird conglomerate of cases being handled by an intern in Charlotte and an attorney in Spartanburg with a case manager from Asheville on a case together. Why? Because both of them, they all had some time and an interest. Maybe it's a slightly unique kind of case or something a little bit different. And you get this sort of cross amount. And I think that being transparent about the numbers helps allow some of those things to happen. It is important though, because attorneys are used to making A's. That's the mentality they come from, that you have that an environment of like, hey, what can I do to help you? That's what, we want every person on here to be at the top of this of those numbers. And I think that it sounds like to me that's what you're putting together. And you're right. I would do it right now. If you're a solo one, I'd say, okay, what are 8 numbers? Because believe me, what I just read off, I can run our office completely off of those numbers. It might have been different the first year, but I'd say just pick 5 or 6 numbers and just say, like, look, go watch Moneyball, and you tell me who's the Jonah
I love
Hill.
that movie.
And, yeah, every lawyer that does what we do loves that movie. And that you have a Jonah Hill at your office. Jonah Hill may be another attorney at your office. It might be the person who sweeps up the floor, but they just are good at making sure the number. You tell them every week, I want you to make this scorecard work. And I want it at the same time every week, and I want it to be this, and I want to pin it up, or I'm going to put it on our internal web, or whatever it's going to be, so everybody can take a look at this, because I want everybody thinking like an owner. I want everybody to be like, yeah, I'd love a little extra marketing in the Wilmington area, but I get it. Overall, we really need to get the Charlotte numbers up, and if it's transparent, you can make decisions like that. Right. If it's not, you have to always get yours. I got to get mine. So I think that it really is the right thing to do. I put a lot of faith in people because I believe in people. And generally they will reward you. When they don't, it's fine. I've had to ask many people to go find another place to work. And it's not a fun job. It's probably the worst part of my job. But I've had to do that on numerous occasions. And it's tough to do, but it's a lot easier when it's transparent, because then they know.
Right.
They can't hit them out of the blue. They know where it is.
Yeah, it is transparent. And I think it's one of the most important things to do as well, because the person that is not a good fit for the culture, for the office, is not only going to not be happy themselves in that environment long term. So they're going to be worse off for staying where they are. But ultimately your team around you is going to kind of lose faith in your ability to kind of find the right A players that are going to contribute to the culture. And again, just speaking from personal experience, there's been a number of times that I have allowed that to go on too long at the office, where somebody was just not a good culture fit. And because of that, it kept us from kind of having the, what I would consider amazing culture that we have at the office now, because ultimately it fell on my shoulders, not kind of making that difficult decision. So I think that's a really important thing to recognize. I mean, as good as you may ultimately get your hiring process down, there's just no point in keeping somebody, no matter how good they are at what they do, no matter what their numbers are that they're bringing in. If they're not a good fit for the culture long term, that is going to be truly damaging to the organization as a whole.
Yeah, tough decisions to make, and I think it's careful. I always try to be careful, because I say the same thing about, like, you just want to have that good fit, because we have such a crazy variety of people that work for us. I mean, every race, creed, color, gender, sexual orientation, all those things, but it's very difficult to be able to say, hey, well, wait a second, because we have people that are so different than my background, that we just get along great. But I think that the question is like that commitment to that goal. And right. I've heard it many times, and so many of your guests on the podcast have been able to say, like, look, you find out and you come razor clear. And we are, we laughed about this before, I know, in other times, but I put a t-shirt on everything. I mean, like right now, our biggest goal for this year is it's called Keeping Promises. And I made big, t-shirt, sent it to all the interns before they came in here. Keeping Promises since 2002. That's our t-shirt.
I love
and
that.
Our motto of for the year. And what I mean by that is keeping promises to our clients. But it's also about keeping promises to our employees, to our team members, and those things. But hey, do you feel comfortable in an environment like this? I mean, some people are just made to work for the state. Right. They are a DA or they are an ADA, and that's what they're going to do. and great for that. They're, we'd love to have them over at King Law because they're great lawyers, but we know in the end, they like to work hard. They like to be in court, and they like to be done at 4:00, and they like to go be drinking by 5. That just isn't going to work in private practice.
Right.
We just went to a full flexible schedule, and I'm nervous. We'll see how all that works. But our attorneys, essentially, as long as they hit their numbers, they get to pick their hours. They have availability requirements that they have to have for new clients, but it gives a lot of flexibility to being an attorney here. We want you to be part of that team, but some of our people work really good at 10:00 at night, and some people are up at 5 and they want to be cranked into. As long as our clients are okay, I'm learning, hey, that's okay. Practice where you want to. But in the end, you've got to have that ability to not be afraid of numbers. You've got to be, sitting around that, with Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill and say, like, you know what? I don't care how much you think that we're making on speeding tickets. It ain't worth the time.
Right.
Yes, it's a lead into our DWI work, but is it enough that we're going to sacrifice the amount of time and effort that it takes to go after every little speeding ticket when Joe down the street can just do it and we're happy with that? Why don't we figure it out this other way? You have to make tough decisions, not just sometimes with people, but maybe with practice areas, or maybe with something that you've always thought, hey, this is something I like to do on the side. Well, maybe that's taken away from the core of who we're going to be. So a lot of hard decisions can be made on people. Some of it can be made on your practice areas. For you guys that are focusing on DWIs, I bet that's a constant decision you're having to make. Because if somebody walks in and they want an estate plan and they got 10 grand in their back pocket, they're going to hand you. That's another tough decision that you got to make. Is that going to be like your 51, or is it not? You better have that decision made long before that person comes with $10,000 at the end of the month.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important to have those decisions thought out well in advance of when they actually come into play. I think at this point, Brian, maybe before we kind of end the call, one of the things that I think is just so cool about your practice and the way that you've grown the firm is that you've kind of had it based out of a small town. And, what we had Zeb Smathers on the podcast back at episode 54. He is just a great guy, great character, but he, talked about kind of, so many attorneys go off to law schools in these big cities, and then they don't come back to their kind of mountain town or to their hometown, wherever it might be across the state or somewhere else. And, we need good lawyers in our communities. And so kind of, similarity there in terms of Canton being a mill town, but he was really encouraging people to come back home to their towns and practice. And I think one of the really inspiring things about the fact that you now have a firm, as you said, close to 70 people on payroll, 50, kind of longer term permanent people on payroll, is that you've been able to do that out of, Rutherford County. And that's where the hub exists. So maybe just speak about a little bit about that, if you wouldn't mind, to just kind of talk about how that dynamic has, helped your practice. And, kind of what that's looked like operating out of that kind of small town headquarters.
Yeah, our HQ, is what we call it, is in Forest City. Like I said, the town that I grew up in. I love that. I now live in Lake Lure, which I think has like 160 residents, period, full time. So I'm used to small town, and I love living on the lake out there. But Forest City is a fantastic place. Why? I would argue it's the same reason that Walmart is still is headquartered in Arkansas. Because when you're in a smaller town, one, people really appreciate who a law firm, who you are as a lawyer. They really understand those things. In Charlotte, I love Charlotte, but you can go to a bar and everybody there is a lawyer, including the bartender.
Right.
In Forest City, it still means something. Two, my employee costs are lower. I have a whole intake team. I like all my calls to be answered. And I love the fact that they can do it in one building, that they can bounce back and forth and be like, hey, I just got this call. There's somebody in, let's say that they get a call from York County, South Carolina. That may be a little bit of a drive for one of our attorneys, but it's still within our zone. And they'll chat back and forth and be like, you think Jordan will be able to handle that? Yeah, Jordan would love to do that. Jordan Guthrie, by the way, is a big fan of this podcast. I told him I'd mention him. He is a religious listener.
That's awesome.
And, and it's like, okay, Jordan will go and do that. So I can do that as a group. And even though they're over all the different counties and locations, every one of those phone calls that are coming in, I want it to feel like that they live, that person is right there in Main Street, Marion, or right there in Nashville, or wherever it's going to be. But being in a small town allows for you to do that. And let me tell you, I mean, the town knows us. The mayor comes to the office and checks in. We've represented many of the town councilmen. Being in a small town it's just a fun place to be. There's not a ton of restaurants like you might have in downtown Nashville. But we got 3 of them I could put up against almost any place, and that's the format that you get. It is harder to recruit when you're going, if I'm going to UNC and I'm looking at a 3L and I'm saying, look, I think that Marion, North Carolina is the place for you. And you get this sort of dead eye look. I want to live in Asheville. We can live with that. Okay. We can make some of that happen. But in the small towns, it still means something to be an attorney. You're going to run into your judge at the gas station. You're going to be able to go hang out at ball games with the attorneys that are on the other side of your cases because your kids are playing together. It's a great way to practice law. It still is the heart of the way, from Abraham Lincoln to the way we do law in America. I'm able to do incredible things because even though we're in mostly small towns, the population that we cover is the size of a big city.
Right.
It just happens to be spread out in a long way. And what I mean by that is there's no huge firm in Marion that's snaking against a big murder trial.
Right.
We're going to be one of the people you're going to look at. You're going to be like, okay, my uncle just got charged with murder. We're trying to put together money. Who do we go to? If you're in Charlotte, good luck being a solo practitioner, building up to where they're going to go to you. Now, I'm sure that there's a lot more murders. Maybe the odds will play in your favor, but I don't think so. But I think if you're in a small town, guess what? You might be that person. And suddenly you're able to handle big cases. And some of the best lawyers I know are in these small towns. Why? Because they've done it.
Right.
And every small town has the same problems that every big town has. So I really do encourage it. At the same time, you got to be in the place where you want to be. And I look first for somebody who loves the geography around them. If they're from Waynesville and they love being in Waynesville, then by God, let's put an office in Waynesville and make it happen for them. Let's hang out with Zeb and find out what's going on in Canton. And it's that kind of relationship that you love having. So, I really encourage it. And I think that King Law's living proof that you can be a big firm, a big player, Lawyers Weekly, top 50 law firm, and be low. It's funny when you see it. It's like Charlotte, Rash.
Yeah.
Right by them, you see Forest City.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? How did Forest City end up on there?
It's so awesome I really think it is inspiring because again, as a newer attorney or a small firm, it just seems, getting to a size of 20 people or 40 people, it seems, totally completely insane, especially if you're going to be in a small place and being one of the largest firms for the little guy in the Southeast. I think it's just really cool to be able to kind of look to you and your example as this is what can happen if you kind of take these core values and this kind of analytical framework to how to approach scaling your firm. You can do it from anywhere. So don't let being in a small market be an excuse for not kind of growing yourself or growing your practice if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, and you can add to that, Jake, that if Brian can do it, God knows anybody can do it. That's probably a better way of saying it.
Well, I feel the same way, but I do love that. I think that, one of the things that holds us all back from either hanging the shingle, which, many listeners have already done that, or bringing on that first person or expanding into that new market. It's all this kind of, fear of like, I don't think I can make this happen. And again, I just think it's really important to have those examples of people like yourself that have been able to push that envelope a little bit and grow in the way that kind of suits how you want to do it. I mean, there's just so much freedom on that in the legal marketplace right now. So I really appreciate, Brian, you're coming on and sharing your wisdom with our audience. You have scaled up at just an incredible level. And it's a real inspiring thing for those of us that are, much newer in the practice of law, looking at our practices and growing. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us.
Well, thank you so much. I love doing it. And if there is any of your listeners that really like this touched a nerve, and it's like, that is what I want to do. I want to see that, or I can visualize what it looks like in 10 years. Hey, give me a call. I'd love to go out to lunch with you. Come up to the lake. I love hanging out there. Just have an evening and love talking shop. This is what I do. It's my hobby. It's what I love. And I can't believe people pay me to do it. And it's been really rewarding.
I love it, Brian. And I will speak to that. We went out to lunch recently and you shared all kinds of great wisdom with me. So Brian's a man of his word. Give him a call and ask him to share his wisdom.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian. Take care. If you found the information in this podcast to be valuable, I simply ask that you pay it forward and share this podcast with another member of the legal community. Also, if you would leave us a rating or a review on whatever platform you are listening on, I would greatly appreciate it.